Hello, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's Forest Space. Thank you for joining us for today's event. It's an artist talk with Judy Anderson. And to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from Forest Space, and we are located here on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. And here at Forest Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities that examine research questions, projects, conversations, things happening across the university. We're also running today's event as a live stream Zoom meeting. For those of you joining us there, we welcome any comments or questions you have. Just pop those into the chat and we can bring those back up for Judy later on. Those of you here in the space, if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone over to you so that everyone at home, online can hear. With that, it is now my pleasure to pass things over for an introduction to Concordia University Chair in Onkwehonwené, Indigenous Methodologies, Hannah Claus. Hannah, it's always great to have you. Welcome back.
I'd like to start first by opening the talk with the Ohandugawardekwa. This is a protocol that, as we're in Kanien'kehá territory, we begin with this protocol. Usually it's the words before all else. When we were created, everything had original instructions, and ours is to be grateful. We're a part of a creation, neither above or below it. The Ohandugawardekwa is like a baseline to remember why we're here, what we're a part of. When we repeat the words, our minds are one, we're setting our intention to bring our minds together and to be of a good mind. So, Kanchakwa, Zewadahunziyos, Gan Nigariwesa. Ankeri wan hotugo, Danu Onkwehonwené, Onkwehonwené gan nega nuero dusara. Etonia duhak ne Onkwehonwené. Agwegu anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Ongwesu'a. All the people. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwegu anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Yetinistaha tsi Owancha, our mother the earth. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwegu anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Gatne garunyo, all the waters. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Agwegu awange datireru, all that lives in the waters. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Oterasu'a, all the roots. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Ohonde su'a danu otsicha su'a, all the grasses and flowers. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne otsitnua su'a, all the insects. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Onunkwa su'a, all the medicines. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Gahisu'a, all the fruits. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Jonekwa, our sustenance foods. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Garunta su'a danu ogwiri su'a, all the bushes and trees. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Kundirio, all the animals. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Otsita ogu'a, the birds. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere watwanuni ne Onkwehonwené danode dinoradut ne Gayeri Nikobarage, the four winds. Togadinayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere Onkwehonwené ne Onkwehonwené dano deyetin waradutne. Yeti sotogu radiweras. Our grandfathers the thunderers. Togari nayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere Onkwehonwené ne Onkwehonwené dano deyetin waradutne. Sungwatsia Joneka Garakwa, our elder brother, the sun. Togari nayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere Onkwehonwené ne Onkwehonwené dano deyetin waradutne. Yeti sota asataneka Wenita Rajis, our grandmother the moon. Togari nayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere Onkwehonwené ne Onkwehonwené dano deyetin waradutne. Otsisto Guarunyo, the stars. Togari nayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Agwego anskatsi andere Onkwehonwené ne Onkwehonwené dano deyetin waradutne. Sungwayat tizo. Togari nayotu ne Onkwehonwené. Onato niore wat gaderi wat gweni doga otena sunge nigura ize gi nee aeze wata sundera tok nigawanage tanu neto. Now I've said all that I was able to. If I've forgotten anything, said it incorrectly, you can continue it further in your minds and it will be right. Those are all the words, and that's all. Welcome everybody, and welcome Judy Anderson. I'm so happy to have you here. So I wear a couple of hats. I guess the relevant ones today are the Concordia University Research Chair in Onkwehonwené. I try and bring more present Indigenous methodologies in art making, and specifically Kanien'kehá methodologies, as this is the territory where we gather today. I'm also co-founder of Daphne Art Center, which is Jage's first Indigenous-led artist-run center. It's a non-commercial art space. And one of the things we do is we have residencies. We're so excited to have Judy Anderson in residence and Sandra Moore, who is here as well. So they're at Daphne this week, and it's for a quillwork ensemble. So Sandra is mostly a self-taught quill worker, moose hair tufter, hide tanner, and fish leather artist maker. Sandra is a citizen of Hiawatha First Nation at Rice Lake, Ontario. She's a teacher and the person who almost single-handedly brings the historic art of quill work back to Hiawatha First Nation. She's worked with community members and groups across the 6 Mississauga nations in Ontario. She started the Quilling Queens group, all of whom are now spreading their skills further afield. She's learned much from and is eager to share knowledge learned from to honor and respect gifts of the Michi Sagig women of the Prince of Wales 1860, a recent exhibition that brought historic quillwork baskets made by women from Rice Lake home for a visit in 2023. And I will add that Lori Beavis, who put together these words and is the director of Daphne, was also curator of that exhibition and has been instrumental in bringing that as well. Judy is someone I consider a friend. Nêhiyaw Cree from Gordon First Nation, Saskatchewan, Treaty 4. And Judy's work, she's installation artist working with many different media, 20-year career exhibiting artist, uses her practice to focus on issues of spirituality, colonialism, family, and indigeneity. She often works collaboratively, often with her son Cruz, where the pair combine traditional Indigenous methodologies and graffiti. In 2014, Judy was invited to teach at the Prince's School of Traditional Arts in London, UK, and this I didn't know, where she taught Prince Charles, who was then Prince Charles, how to sew beads and porcupine quills on a moose hide. Judy is currently an associate professor of Canadian Indigenous studio art in the Department of Arts at the University of Calgary. And I guess I'll just finish by saying that among those hats that I wear, I'm also a visual artist. I'm a member of Tyendinaga Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. Kenhtè is the Kanien'kehá name. And I'm going to welcome Judy to the podium. Hello.
Okay. So, oh, right, that's me. Does it go big or does it? Oh, there we go. Okay, good. Now I have to go back one. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Judy Anderson, nêhiyaw from the Kanien'kehá First Nation in Saskatchewan. So when you were saying say the words, my reserve is actually called George Gordon First Nation, but the person, so our chief that signed Treaty 4, his name was Kanien'kehá, but he got renamed to George Gordon. So I'm trying to like reclaim that, even though my res doesn't do that, I'm doing it. So I'm kind of cheating. So Treaty 4, Saskatchewan. And it's a great pleasure to be here on these lands, being able to, and being invited to speak here tonight. So I need to thank you, Hannah, for inviting me, and then also Lori Beavis and all the people at Daphne for the week-long residency. So I'm also working alongside Sandra Moore, as you heard, and I have a fun fact, is that last night we went for dinner and found out that we had met before in Dawson City in 2017. But it was very brief because Sandra was up there working, can't remember your job, she was a manager for something. And then she was also bringing quill work up there and was teaching quill work and then learning how to do some tufting. And I wound up there for a week-long residency with Cruz, who's the blonde sitting, like his hair is bleached out there, beside Sandra. And we were able to go to her workshop for an hour or something. And I got to learn, and those are my hands there, learning how to tuft. So that was very cool because we couldn't exactly remember. And then I found the photo on my phone. So yay. So here we are again, reunited for our week residency here. Thank you all for coming. I know that everyone's busy, and I'm really grateful that you came to listen to me when you have a lot of other things that you could be doing. So thank you for that. For my talk, I'm going to talk in kind of like an Indigenous way where I have a trajectory and it looks like I'll get pulled off of it. But I kind of consider that an Indigenous way of like we're walking this circle and then I get pulled off into a little circle that comes back onto the main big circle. So I'll kind of go, and then this happened, and then backtrack or something. So the years won't be linear. Okay, so every time I do a talk, I need to acknowledge where I learned to bead. So that was from Sheila Orr. I wound up auditing a class at the First Nations University of Canada, and she was the one who taught me that. And she also introduced a little bit of quilling that I can't actually do, but I'd like to retry it again. And it was, I don't know why I wanted to do the hardest quill thing ever. And I didn't get very far, but it was weaving. And so I stopped that. And then the person who actually taught me how to quill and what I called the easy one and the hard one, and then wrapping one is Jacob Pratt from, he's Dakota from, I think he's from Saskatchewan. Sorry, Jacob. And then the other person I'd like to acknowledge is my friend and teacher, Ruth Cuthant, whose work, the trading series, which I think everybody knows, it was an important piece in my life. It was the one that made me turn to beading. I didn't do any beadwork until she made that piece. And I was like, I want to do something as epic as Ruth Cuthant. And I'm going to do beading. I don't know what it is. And then I came up with an idea. So I know that there were other beadworkers at the time. So we had people like Nadia Muir, Marcus Ammerman, Terry Greaves, Jamie Okuma, etc. But it was really that piece from Ruth. And she was also a mentor to me. So like I was her mentee. And so she mentored me in a lot of different ways. So I like to acknowledge her. So, so from her, actually, sorry. I also need to acknowledge spirit. So all of my work, I think all of what I would consider, and then I'll throw up air quotes, successful work comes from spirit. If it wasn't for spirit, I feel like I wouldn't have most of my work. So when I was, so years and years ago, I went out to fast, and the way that we go out to fast is, and probably a lot of other people do, but you go out for somebody else, you're not going out for yourself. And so I was going out for my youngest son, who kept getting sick all the time. And as it turned out, what I found out was that he was going to be fine. They're like, he's fine. He's okay. It's your oldest son that needs some attention. And so I was like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And they said, well, you need to honor him. And so when I was thinking about honoring Cruz, I I was like, okay, how do you honor somebody? You hold them up, you think about them, and you try to pull out and show them how important they are. And so at that time, this is always a little embarrassing, but at that time, he was in grade 4. They invited in a graffiti artist to teach the kids about graffiti. And I was like, this is the worst idea ever. Like, but also not thinking like, actually grade 4 kids are really well behaved. But I was also thinking like, well, this could be like boys running off and saying I could go do all this graffiti. And I was also thinking, well, this is my son. He will actually be the one who runs off and wants to do all the graffiti. And it was true. So he was introduced to him and he picked it up and he loved it. And I realized at that time, so we would have been about 12 or 13 or 14 when I was told that I needed to honor him. And I thought, well, he's really into graffiti and that's something that I could support, right? So it's art, let's do this. And so what I wound up doing was taking his first burner, which is a large elaborate beaded piece, and I wound up beading it on this moose hide. And so when you're a writer, so graffiti artists are called writers. So when you're a writer, you have a name that you use. And so he was young and he's like, what should I use? And I said, well, you're young and you're not going to be out there getting up. So just use your name. So we used his name in this one. And this is him showing me how to take a picture. So with this piece, just to show you the size. So it's fully beaded. And that's how I wound up honoring him. One of the things that I noticed and why I was thinking about honoring him and the things that he did, aside from being told that I should do this, was I was thinking about the kids at that time also, that he was at that age of when boys traditionally would have, boys and girls, everybody, would be going out and learning different things. But at that time, they're being told to sit down, be quiet, sit still, don't disrupt, don't do anything. But in our cultures and societies, they'd be learning, going on their first hunts, going out and learning how to, be on the land and being physical, right? And so for me, I was thinking about how when graffiti writers write and they get up and they make these elaborate pieces, that's actually a way of doing something that is great, right? So I think about this piece that's called Exploit Robe Toying Around. And so back in the day, the men would also make these exploit robes where they would draw or paint their deeds, these wonderful and great deeds that they did. And so I was thinking about graffiti being the same thing. And so what's that? It's a moose hide. Yeah, so it's the size of a moose. So it's probably like 4 by 6 feet. Pardon me? Oh, no problem. So what was I saying? Okay, so I was thinking about, so when writers get up, it's like, that's the thing, right? Like, and it's actually, there's so much really great graffiti. That was a bad sentence, but great graffiti around here. And you look at the spots that people are getting the graffiti at, right? And you think, okay, how did they get up there? And how did they not get caught? And how do they do the size? Look at the letter structure, look at the colors and everything. And that's kind of the same thing as when you would go out and you would hunt and you would war and all those things. It'd be just like this fantastic exploit that you did, and they'd be stories told, right? So in this one, if Cruz didn't get up, but if he had, it'd be just like you throw that down and then you tell that story. So it acts as a mnemonic device as well. So when I work, I work in series of 4. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to track his graffiti career, like as a writer, how he moved from like one to the next, and then also myself as a beater. So the first one I should have said was like, so the title was Exploit Robe Toying Around, and the toying around refers to like how good you are as a writer. So if you're bad at it, you'd be called a toy. And so for both of us, it was like that was like probably the 3rd or 4th thing that I had beaded. So there was a lot I needed to learn. It's all squishy and there's, whatever. And for him, there's something about the force field. There's like all of these things that are off, right? And so then this second one, which I just finished in 2022, I started it in about 2013, but I wound up doing a lot of work in between it. And I finally got invited into an exhibition and I kept offering it to people so that I would finish it. And then I finally got invited to an exhibition. I'm just like, will you trust me to finish this on time? And they said, yes, please finish it. We'll put it off. And I'm like, thank you. So it did take like the 10 years to make it, but it wasn't 10 years of straight beading because I was making other work in between. So this one was, so the first one would have been around 12 years old, and this one would be more about 18, 19, 20-ish. So when we title our pieces, we're very tongue in cheek. And so going pro is not us going pro at all. So there's a lot of errors on his side and there's errors on my side again. He no longer writes. So if this series continues, it will be something different. So, but I might be doing beadwork on hides. Anyways, we just have to decide what we're doing because now he does atelier drawing and painting. So yeah, he's taught himself, or he's gone to school and learned some very amazing things. Okay, and so what happened was that after this one, I wound up talking to two of my friends that I went to school with for my MFA, Sheila Norris and Loretta Powley, and asked them if they would collaborate on an exhibition where we honored people in our lives. And I was thinking about, what's the dinner table? What's her name again? Sorry, very famous. Thank you. Yeah, it's Chicago. I was thinking about that, about how I had just seen it. And I was thinking about how a lot of the names on her table were like these really big names, but how every day, like in our everyday lives, we have those types of people that we just don't know about. So what we wound up doing was picking 3 or 4 people that were important to us, and we wound up honoring them. And we decided to do it through like feet for some, like that was me. I said, let's do it through feet. And then they went hard and heavy into it. And I was just like, wait, I don't want to, I want to do boxes, which was really unfair to them, but they were okay. In the end, they were okay with it. So so I wound up honoring, one of them is Maria Campbell, who is a close friend and a mentor and also a teacher to me through many years. And so I redid her book cover. And then when I'm working on these honor pieces, I'm thinking about that relationship that I have with them and what that means to me. And so by recreating her book, I was thinking about all of the lessons and the teachings that she had given me. So, which is why it's titled, "And from Her Parts of Me Emerged." So she taught me about parts of me that I didn't know existed. Another one was the fellow artist, Sheila Norris. And Sheila is like one of those people that is just like, she doesn't know how important and amazing she is in this world. And so I made the piece secretly so she wouldn't know. And every time we were getting together and talk about where the work was going, I wouldn't talk about the last piece. And she never asked. And I was like, oh, this is so good. So when I put it in, it was until it was installed, and she walked by and she went, oh, is that for me? And then she laughed and she just kept walking. I said, yes. And then she kept laughing. And then she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it is for you. And I was like, wow, that didn't mean anything to her. And then she stopped in her tracks and she burst into tears. So I was like, you are worth celebrating. So in this one, she actually worked with a lot of plexi, and she would collect things in little containers. So I wound up collecting things in containers. And I know in one of her pieces, she actually had I think it was her children's teeth. So I borrowed my son's teeth and I put them in there too. So, and then beaded her name on the box. This one, it's hard to see, but it says Linda Duval on it. And she's an artist from Saskatchewan. You may or may not know her, but she was also one of my teachers in university. And she was probably the most important, like one of the most important. I have a few, but she was the one who actually made me an artist. She was the one who taught me what art could be. She taught me about intervention, durational pieces, sound, video, all the things I didn't really know existed, because I was like most people, when I went into university, I thought it was drawing and painting, right? And then when I just was like, okay, I'll take this class, and I kind of didn't really enjoy it, but I enjoyed her. And then all of a sudden I started making art, and I was like, oh my God, Linda, you're amazing. So I love her. And that's just a close-up you can't see, but it's beaded. And that's how I met Dana Danger, was when I was beading that one. Yeah. And then this one is for my bestie, Brenda McDougall. And it is titled Fuck Yeah Besties, because we have mouths like truckers when we get together and we cannot stop swearing. Apologize for that, but I love it. And I love her. So in this one, in this piece, Cruz, so she's known Cruz since he was a little boy. And he wound up graffitiing her name. And then so he's in there too. So it kind of became this kind of family type thing. And then I wound up stealing her beadwork. She wound up beading the birds. And the black one doesn't have a tail. And it wasn't until after I was done beading it, I said, why doesn't it have a tail? She goes, I wasn't done beading it, Judy. Like, okay, well, there it was. That's when I stole it from you. So I recreated her birds, and then I put a bee in there, and the bee and the birds are very much intertwined. And then on the ends, I have otters that represent me. And then yeah, anyways, she's great. And then the last, well, this isn't the last one, but I also honored my youngest son, August. And so the title, people might know this piece already. It's going through a change. So my youngest son changed his name. And so I don't show the name anymore. You can still find it online, I'm sure. But I'm showing you the close-up because it's going to get a different name on the neck guard for August. And then at the top, it's now changed to When Hockey Equals Life. I actually threw that out as a title when I was first making it, and he said, no. And I said, okay. So then, because when I make the work with my kids, I want to make sure that they're happy with what I'm doing and the choices. And I kept trying to get them to choose colors and stuff, and they won't do that either. So one of the reasons why we have the rainbow is to honor LGBTQ2S people in our lives. And because we also didn't know where the colors were going. That was just a practical matter, but we also, the people that we love. And so August used to play hockey, and it did used to mean his life, but he doesn't play hockey anymore, but he still watches hockey and follows it like crazy. Go Jets. Apparently they're breaking records. So the last piece, I entered it into the Salt Spring National Art Prize. And I won it. I was very surprised. I wanted to win it like everybody when they enter a prize, but I didn't think I would, but I did. And I was very thrilled about that. And a residency came with it. So I wound up spending 6 weeks on Salt Spring Island. And it started this series. This is when I made this one. And so in this one, I'm honoring the 4 directions. And I'm honoring it in the colors that are like we kind of basically ascribe to those directions. So depending on what you follow and where you follow, they can change. So white being the north, yellow being the east, south being red, and west being blue. And so what I did in this one was I was thinking about language, and I was thinking about the directions, and I was thinking about honoring those directions, and I was thinking about the colors. And so I had crews graffitied the Cree words for the colors of those directions. So I can't actually, you know, and this is like, I'm really bad with language. And so what I was hoping was that when I beaded these, that I would actually remember the words. So I thought, you know, it took about 3 weeks, and I think they're about 7 inches across. 7? Oh, okay, I think they're 7 inches across. And they're antique. Most of the beads are antique, so they're small, size 12-ish or 13. And so it would take 3 weeks to do one, and that's full-time, long days. And I thought by the end of that, I would remember the words, but I remember the words and I don't. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. There you go.
Would you mind repeating that for
I'm
those
just
online?
like, if I get a little closer, I can see it.
White is Wapskal, yellow is Osoal, blue is Sipikwal, and red is Mikwal. Oh, it's because
it's hard to tell. Sometimes some of the words are,
it's because the ones I gave you are, I'm going to go into language right now. I'm a linguist. So the ones I gave you are intransitive inanimate verbs. The ones you've got written are animate intransitive verbs. There you go.
Yes, thank you. I did. And you know, thank you for saying that, because that actually was part of the process. I actually had to find out if I could actually leave an animate word hanging by itself or not. You know, because I didn't know, because usually you'll say like the red fox, right? And so that makes it animate. But so I wanted it to be an animate color. so that it was speaking to those directions as being alive, which goes with the title, There's Life in There. Yeah. And from that, so again, working in series of 4, I wound up working on this one, which is a little bit more political. And I was thinking about the words that get ascribed to races. So like a racist food word, right? So as an Indigenous person, I've been called an apple many times in my life, where it's like, even though I'm not that red on the outside, but white on the inside, red on the outside, right? So that you're not, what they're saying is you're not really who you are. And so you're not, and usually that's because you're not following what people would think would be a culturally proper. And so, so I have banana for yellow, apple, and then Oreo. And the most interesting thing about this is that I actually spent about a year talking to people about what is the word for white people. I know it's not a race, I know it's not a culture, but what is the word that we use for people who are not behaving white enough? And there isn't one. Because, and so these words usually, like when I'm being called an apple, I'm being called it from my own people, right? So that I'm not behaving in the way that they think I should be behaving or acting. And so every time anybody came up with a word, it was from outside the group of people. And so that's why it's blank. So a square is not a circle. What I found, I'm just gonna look this up here, I want to read. Here we go. It showed at the, oh my goodness, at a Biennale. And I got a message from somebody that I knew that worked there, and they said that there was an East Indian man who was raised in Canada as a white Canadian. And because of this, he faced judgment and pressure by both BIPOC and white people to act more East Indian. And so he found a like connection with this piece. He was like, finally, somebody's saying this. And I mean, I know that a lot of people have had this experience, but for that guy, it was, I guess it was quite profound, and he felt happy that he knew other people, you know, went through this, even though we're not all that happy. And it's my mom's handwriting. So my last honor piece that I'll talk about is for my brother. So my brother is a 60s scoop, and he was with us for a little while, but it took my mom a long time to look for him. And when she found him, he had passed away already. And so we didn't get a chance to meet him. And so she had asked me, and she had wound up getting an item of his from the adoptive family. And she asked me, she said, if I give you this, can you make an art piece for him? And so I said, yeah, of course I will. And so I came up with an idea, and then I tried putting it together. And I don't know, as artists, like when you make artwork and you know it's not going to work, you know, like you keep thinking about it, and then it's just too big and too hard, and there are too many of this, that, and the other things, and it just wasn't working. And so I called her and I said, it's not working. I can't make it with that piece, but I'll come up with something. And she said, okay. I said, so I'm still going to do it. And then I was driving up north with to go on a camping trip. And I was thinking about the piece, and I was trying to come up with the answer. And I actually decided to kind of go into like a conversation, try and have a conversation with him. And so I did. And I said, okay, I need to make this piece. I want to honor you, and I want to, but I don't know what to do. What can I do? And so his answer to me was, well, you make this work about relationships. What is our relationship? And I said, every time I think of you, I cry. Sorry, I'm gonna cry. And he said, that's the piece. And so I said, okay. And so then I think it took like 2 days, and I had the piece. And so what I wound up doing was the top part, there's a laser pointer here. So this top part in here, and you can see that there's a line here that kind of flows there. So the top part there, that's weaved. So that's all, it's called the square stitch. And so that's all weaved. And then from that line down, it's hanging like a fringe. And so that was about crying. So it was about how many tears I'd shed, because when I started re-asking my mom to contact him, I had actually started crying. That's when I started crying about him. And that was actually the year that he died. So I feel like there was like kind of like this connection between us. And does everybody know about the spirit bead? So I think it's right here, right there. So it's like when we make beadwork, we're not perfect. And so a spirit bead will be put in to acknowledge that we know that we're not perfect, that the only perfection is creator. And so I put the one spirit bead in that spot, and it's a red one, and it's to represent my heart, because it's probably as close as I could get at the weave part where my heart would be standing up. So the piece is 6 feet, about 6.5 feet by 9 feet. And then at the bottom are scattered quills, and they're used quills, so they would have been flattened, and they're laying in the pile like that. And it's talking about old traditional ways that we would have done things, and then how things are done today. So the beads have replaced the quilling, and these family structures have been replaced also. And this is just it installed. Again. Okay. So Cruz and I collaborate. When we collaborate, so the hide piece, I would call that one an honor piece, but I do work with him on getting it together. But then it's like, and then I want to leave him alone, and then I do all the work. But then we'll come together and we'll make work. And so we've done work. I'll bead smaller pieces, and so we'll donate those, and then we make these tongue-in-cheek things and whatever. But we were invited into the to that biennale that I'm not remembering the name of right now, and we wound up making this piece. So it's got like, and we're also very famous for making these really awkward and long and hard to explain to people titles. But they make sense to us. I spent, I think, like 10 emails trying to email somebody about a different title on something, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. But in this one, Cruz didn't actually add his name to it, so he's actually on the plinths with the cover on top of it, and he wound up graffitiing, well, not graffitiing, sorry, gold leafing a word in Cree on both of them, and then I wound up beading on the back two things. But this is what it looks like when you look through, and then these are the ones that I beaded. And so what we were doing is we were thinking about a lot of things at this time. So we were thinking about the loss of language, because when he went to try to find the words in Cree, he couldn't find our dialect, a Y dialect, and so he wound up finding Swampy Cree. So he wound up doing his in Swampy Cree, and then I did mine in Swampy Cree as well, because that was the book that we could find, and I wound up taking it further away into syllabics. And so what we decided to do was to do, like, we want to talk about emotions as well, and how, like, in this kind of world, like, emotions are kind of kept over there, you know, like we all walk in and, you know, we don't really have a lot of emotions, and we're not supposed to. And so mine says, I am homesick, and his says, I am angry. And then we responded to each other's, and mine says, he or that person is homesick, or sorry, is angry, and mine says she is homesick. And so that was us in our own way acknowledging each other's emotions, but also how they're hidden and they're like way down there, and how we don't really talk about them, or we're told not to. And he wound up doing, as I said, gold leaf, and I wound up doing mine in copper. They're greening up really nice. But and we were talking also about how materials, about like important materials. So for us, it's copper, and for non-Indigenous people, it would be gold. So we find more in copper than that. And then it also speaks to who we are as spiritual people in this world. So he's a bear, I'm a coyote. Oh yeah, there we go. And mine is it's in the shape of Saskatchewan, because that's my home. Okay. The piece. So like that. So like that, the outline of it is the shape of Saskatchewan. And then my bead that's out of place, or no, sorry, the center is my home. So like where it radiates out from. Yeah. And then like, so for me, I have sweetgrass. I also didn't point this out, but, and his, it's more like a chain link kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. So my most recent body of work that I did, I had to get ready for a solo exhibition at the Dunlop Art Gallery. And I'd been thinking about indigenization. And ever since I applied for my job at the University of Calgary, because I was part of a cluster hire of 7 Indigenous faculty members. And it was, I'm just going to read this. Let me start again. I've been thinking about indigenization since I applied for my job at the University of Calgary. I was part of a cluster hire of 7 Indigenous faculty members undertaken by the University of Calgary's Faculty of Arts, which was explicitly signaling an intention to create a strategy for decolonization and indigenization in response to the release of the TRC's 94 calls to action. When I was at my interview, when I actually started thinking about indigenization and I was at my interview, they said, what can you do, something along these lines, I paraphrase, what can you do to support indigenization in the university? And at that time, I was working at the First Nations University of Canada, where we were already indigenized, but I didn't actually know that. Like I couldn't like see, because it was just like, this is just the way we are, right? This is like what we're based on. What's that? Yeah. So anyways, so when they asked me this question, yeah, that would have been a good answer. I actually said, because I actually looked up, like I was searching, it's like, what do you guys believe? What's your focus, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't find anything because they were actually still writing the document. And so then I said, to be honest, I have no idea what indigenization is. But because I come from a place that it's indigenized, but I feel like if I come here and I work here, I'll figure that out pretty quickly and then I'll be able to help, right? And I guess they liked the honest answer because they hired me. And before I go any further, what I want to say is that I've been impressed by the University of Calgary and the Faculty of Arts administrative response in support of indigenization. They are making progress and advances quite quickly. And there's still work to be done. So I'm not saying that it's perfect, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So when I'm speaking about this topic, I'm not criticizing the university. I'm thinking about indigenization in general and in ways in which I've worked with the ideas under the umbrella and the theme of indigenization before. Let's see. So what happened was in this exhibition, I wound up revisiting some ideas that I had been working on when I was in my undergrad. And so back then in my undergrad, and I didn't know what I was doing because nobody told me what I was doing, and I didn't know why I was doing these things. But when I was out shopping one day, I found a sweater that said Indian on it, just said Indian, and I loved it. And it was made by an Indian motorcycle, but usually you get Indian motorcycle, like the whole thing, but this just said Indian, and I lost my mind and I bought it. It was way too big. It was like huge, and it was like, down here, but so I'd wear it to every presentation that I had to do because I wanted everybody to be aware, of who I was and what I was talking about, that I was an Indian, even though they already knew that. And so what I didn't realize was that I was doing an intervention. And it was at that time also where you couldn't find t-shirts, you couldn't find it. If there was anything out there, was stereotyped, right? And it wasn't often made by us. So whenever I would find anything, I would buy it so that I could wear it. So my second thing that I got, and this was by an Indigenous person, Ryan Singer, was the wagon burner one. And I wore that to everything. And actually that's my headshot that I'm using for everything now is with that t-shirt on, because I kind of re-envisioned it. And then, anyways, okay. And then I was able to get this one, and this was at Mokna. So that's where I was able to find them. And that one is by Virgil Ortiz. And then I made this one. We had a Halloween party and we had to dress up as our favorite art piece. So I went as Cyborg. Yes, why am I forgetting her name right now? Thank you, Casey Adams, Cyborg Hybrid. Thank you. And so what mine says is it says it has Aboriginal, Native, First Nations, something, and I've crossed them all out. And then I have nêhiyaw that I beaded into it and then dressed up, and then we took photos. And then for the exhibition, I actually made this t-shirt that says, "What are you willing to allow?" without a question mark. It's more of a statement. Let's see. I wanted to actually wear the wagon burner t-shirt at my interview at the University of Calgary, but I didn't, because I didn't know what they would be willing to allow, right? And I guess like people do that kind of stuff all the time in their interviews, but I didn't know as an Indigenous person if I could, and so I didn't. So I took a safer route. Then in 2021, following the discovery of the unmarked grave sites of the former residential schools, I embarked on a durational intervention, is what I call it. Some people call it a performance. But after they found the grave sites, I don't know if other people were like this, but I had a lot of grief and I had a lot of anger, because we always knew they were there. And it felt like, okay, you finally know it's here, and now we're having this huge outpouring, and it was too much for me. And so that term, what I did was I wore an orange shirt every day for that term for any business that I had on campus. So every meeting, every class, anything on campus. So if I wasn't wearing an orange shirt and I had a Zoom meeting that day and I was in my house, and I'd run and put on my shirt, because it was something that I needed to do to work through it. And I was teaching 2 classes at that time, and I didn't know if anybody had noticed, because all my years of wearing shirts that I would call interventions, nobody ever asked me about them. Nobody ever said, "Hey, I noticed your Indian t-shirt or your Indian sweater," or "Hey, I noticed your wagon burner. I noticed, I noticed this." It never happened once. And even into 2021, when I wore that shirt every day, not one person asked me about it. And I thought that was interesting, because I thought, I keep wearing the same, like not the same shirt. I had several, but I keep wearing these shirts and nobody's saying anything. But because I was teaching a class on how to start a project and see it to the end, like one big project, to students, I was making the work alongside them. And so I saved the last 15 minutes of the class just to talk about the piece, not as you didn't say anything. I just wanted to say, I've also been making work. What did you notice? Kind of thing. And so what was really interesting about it was, on that very last day, one of my students was also doing an intervention, which is really great. And I didn't bring the photo of it, but she wound up showing up on the last day of class, and a t-shirt she made of her own artwork, which I thought was pretty cool. And then in my last 15 minutes, I said, "So I've been making this work." And I don't quite remember what they said, and they said it more beautifully than I'm ever going to say it. But some of the responses were, I thought more about my role in the history of Canada and what Indigenous people and the history of Indigenous people in Canada, and like what I don't know. And I started to research more. Somebody else said the same thing. I researched the history of Canada more. The t-shirt made me think about how I could be helpful. I realized that I don't have to wear the t-shirt only on Orange Shirt Day. And then later that person wound up running a workshop in their orange shirt. And there were quite a few more. Like, I was so beside myself that I couldn't actually remember it, because I was just, what, really? Right on. Because you don't know when you're doing interventions if your work is making a difference. And that for me was great. And I wasn't purposely asking them so that I could see if I was doing a good job. I wanted to see if they noticed, right? And they did. I mean, one person said, "Yeah, I was kind of surprised you wore that thing on that day over top of your orange shirt instead." It was kind of funny, but anyways. So in essence, the intervention impacted the ways that the students began to think about their own positionality in Canada. And so I was very thrilled about that. So this piece here, it's called "It Really Is a Circle," is speaking about all those interventions, and then how that stuff is kind of hanging around, waiting, I guess, for me to enact it or to enliven it again. And so I also wound up putting the collaborative piece with Cruz into the exhibition as well. So it's sitting there waiting for its next show. And that's just the t-shirt I made. Okay, so Brett Graham visited the University of Canada, and he did an indigenization workshop, and I attended it. Even though I was hosting him, I attended it as I attended it as a student. And as part of it, he said, how do you indigenize the gallery? And so I had to do it with the stuff that was there. And so what I wound up doing is I put up a two by two teepee. And this is a better version. The other one was not as great because I wound up writing all the words. So the teachings that go for each pole in the way that we put up teepees on the plains, I wrote on that on there. And then I took a smoked moose hide from my office that I had my studio, and I put it on the teepee so that I was indigenizing the space through smell and through seeing, and then by being able to show that like we're here, even if it doesn't look like these supplies can make it. So for the exhibition indigenized, I wound up putting up that 2 by 2 teepee again, but I kind of tweaked it so it would look a little better. I spray painted the words onto the 2 by 2 pieces, and there's a buffalo hide on the bottom. The thing that happened when I put it up here, so these images are from Swift Current, and the floor was so slippery that we needed to stop that. So I wound up getting rugs to put it on. So I was like, that's how you do it. Yeah, make it work, right? So we put rugs on the floor and we put the buffalo hide. But one of the things that I would do, one of the reasons why I chose to do the 2 by 2 teepee with Brett Graham was that I wanted to use this hide because one of the things that I would do is, because I know that smell indigenizes, right? And anybody who knows the smoked hide for Indigenous people, it's like, it's medicine. It's like the perfume you want to wear all the time. And so but it bothers other people, right? They're like, that smells, I don't like it. It's this or it's that. And so what I would do is I would actually take this hide and I would walk around the building with it, right? And I wouldn't even take it out of the bag. I could just like have the bag open and then just walk around. And like 10 minutes after I'd pass, people would be just like, hey, is Judy here? Hey, I wanted to see Judy, is she there? Because they would know that it was me, because also that's how my office would smell. I don't smell it anymore because it's constantly there. So that was a way of indigenizing the space. So in one of my classes, it was one of those ones where they make something from beginning to end. One of my students wound up making a jingle dress, and it was her turn to talk about her work. And I'm just like, you have to go talk about your work now. And she said, okay, just a minute. And she ran down the hallway and she put the dress on. And when she walked back, I could just hear her coming. And it was the most beautiful sound I had heard in the institution, because there was nobody else in the hallway, just her walking down. And it was just these jingles, walking, 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 walking. And I was like, that is indigenization. And so then she walked in and she came and she did her presentation, and all I could think was about that. And I thought, that is my next piece. And so this one is titled, As She Walked Down the Hallway, She Unintentionally ... indigenized. Because I am a true believer that indigenization is easy. It is so easy, but it's what institutions are willing to allow. And a lot of that, and it's not a lot. If we can be ourselves, so if we can walk down the hallway, like one of the things that happened was when I heard her first, I was like, oh, somebody's gonna complain about how loud that is, right? Nobody was there or something, they didn't, right? But that could be a thing that could possibly, and that was near the end of COVID, so there weren't a lot of people around, so I don't know if that would be as tolerated now. And also the smell. So when I worked at First Nations University of Canada, Indian Affairs was on top of us, and we had to keep our hides in a bag, in a bin, because the smell bothered the people in Indian Affairs, like when it would go up. I know. I know, that's funny, right? So, anyway, so that's it. So in this one, with this piece, it also has sound. So I had my friend, we recorded her walking on a stage with the jingle dress. And then what happens is that there's a motion sensor, and when you get close to it, it sets off the sound. And then you hear this person walking in a jingle dress. And so what that does is it invites the viewer to be a part of indigenization. And unintentionally. And this is, can't remember how to say the name, but this is the Indigenous run, jingle maker. She started when she was a teenager. Okay, back to honoring people. So this is work where I honor individual people in my life. So if I had the time, my work is very time consuming. If I had the time, these are all the people that I need to honor, but I don't have the time. But when I was honoring people, I started to think about them as animals. I don't know how it started, it just did. And so I have all of these for them. So August, Reese, Connor, Brenda, it was my mother, Brenda, Connor, my sister, Jenny, Catherine Boyer, Carmen Robertson, and Ruth Cuthand. And I would have a piece made for every one of them to talk about the relationships that we have. So in the meantime, the hides are, the furs are stand-ins for them. And that's where they're installed right now at the Nickel Gallery in Calgary. And then this one is titled, how much time do I have? We're okay? Okay. Okay, so this one is titled Deep Down, just wait. When I close my eyes, deep down, I know this is the answer. And so when I think about colonization and how negative it has been, it's affected all of us. And it's affected me in a way where I haven't always liked myself, right? Because as part of that, we're taught to dislike ourselves as Indigenous people. That's what residential school was about. And so one of the things that happens is that I'm homesick. So like in the last one, I said I am homesick, and I'm almost perpetually homesick. And so I have this like feeling of discontent. And a lot of people will say, home is where you lay your hat. And that doesn't sit that well with me. But in reality, that there's truth in it, right? I think it could be said in a different way. But when I was talking, so I was going through this specific, this bout of homesickness, and I was with an elder, and he actually wound up talking to me about that. And he was saying that when you think about the teepee is like, it's a home, right? And it actually represents also a woman's skirt, and they take care of the home traditionally, right? And then, but he said, but when you think also about that, the teepee, and if you think about sweat lodges, they're also held down by rocks, right? And so rocks are this grounding force. And so if you think about yourself as home and about rocks, and then you can ground yourself. And so I wound up making this piece thinking about that. And I was thinking about, so it's a skirt, but it's made on a teepee pattern. So it should fit around my waist, but then it also then would flow out like a teepee. It didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted it to, because there's this thing that happens at the top, but that's what it is. And I have to say, ever since making it, I don't have homesickness anymore. So it was actually a healing piece. So if anybody asks you if art is healing, it definitely is. And so in it, when I first installed it, it was actually closed, and I had it closed, and then I had copper across it as the pins, but then I didn't care for how that looked, so I kept it kind of open a little bit. Oh, wait, is that it? I felt like that. Okay, that's it. That's the indigenization. Oh, so the copper pins are in there. And then my intention was, there's a song that actually goes, there's a grounding song, and I was going to like hum it and put it in like sound into it, so that if you, but have it quiet enough that if you didn't hear it, you didn't hear it, and that was okay. But if you did hear it, then it would be kind of a gift. So there's also a wooden bowl with tobacco in it. And so that's to get that smell of tobacco into the gallery. So I was trying to work with senses, so like sound, smell, you know, and yeah. Okay, so the most recent work that I've done, it's a new piece that I did, and it's called In Plain Sight. And I have an exhibition at the Nickel Gallery with Catherine Boyer. years and years ago, when I was working at the First Nations University of Canada, I had the pleasure of hiring Catherine Boyer into the role as the, she had so many different titles. So she took care of the collection and she took care of the gallery. And I wound up mentoring her. And we also wound up working together very closely. So whenever she needed help in the gallery, I was there, I helped her hang work, I helped her shop, I helped her do the openings, I did all of that stuff. And then when I needed help in the classroom, she would come in. So if I needed somebody to sit because they were going to draw, she would come in and be the model. We didn't let anybody know because if the union found out, they might have been like, no, no, no. So what happened is through that, we wound up actually getting a very close relationship. And so I count her as one of my most favorite people in this world. Sometimes she's like a bestie. Sometimes she's my daughter. Sometimes, well, no, she's those two things, right? And sometimes she's like a sibling to my kids. So because she was involved in August's life and knows crews and everything. And so when I got this exhibition at the Nickel Gallery, I said, I'd really like to show with Catherine, because Catherine, once I left to go to the University of Calgary, she left and went to go to the University of Manitoba to do her master's degree. And she wound up making all this fabulous work. She was already making fabulous work, and she's like a well-known artist in her own right. And I wanted us to kind of complete this circle by finally having an exhibition with her. And so one of the things that when we were working together at the First Nations University was we would visit and talk and stuff like that. But we would go to these openings and we would also look at fashion and we would think like, what are you going to wear to the opening? What are you going to wear to the opening? I don't know if everybody does that still, but what are you wearing? What are you wearing? And so I'm going to read you a quote from a book. So I was teaching some art history at that time. And there's this quote from Berlow and Phillips, Native North American Art, which was the text we were using because it was the one that brought everything together. It was like the easiest. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on that book, but it was this particular quote, and I changed one or two words just to make it better for me. So, phrases in Plains languages reveal that people adorn themselves in proper relationship to the spirit world. In some cases, powerful items of ceremonial gear were described in words whose approximate translation is "something sacred wears me," a reversal of ordinary assumptions about who is the wearer and what is worn. And then through my years of teaching and then also learning, I found out that on the plains, we were very individual. So we would have, we have a lot of the same, we have the same spirits and stuff, but how that was shown or made in our clothing would be different, and it would be for the individual. So Catherine and I started talking about making something that would be our individual thing that we could wear to openings. And I was invited up to the White Horse to do a talk at the gathering. I'm looking at you because I can't remember what it's called because I didn't write it down, for the Indigenous Curatorial Collective. Yeah, thank you. And so I was invited to speak, and they had a dinner, and everybody that was serving there was wearing these beautiful vests. And they were all individual. They were similar vests. They were made a little bit differently, but they all had their own design on them. And you knew that meant that was saying who they were. And so when I came back, I said, Catherine, we need to make vests. And I forgot to put her vest in here, but if y'all know the sky vest, yeah. So we both went off to do our things. It kind of fell off. We didn't do it. And then she made the sky vest. And if y'all know the sky vest, you know I'm no longer going to be making a vest because that is beautiful. So for this, yeah, right. So for this exhibition, we decided I said, well, I know you've made your vest, but I'd still like to make something that would say who I am. And so she said, well, I have to complete the outfit. I said, okay, great. So we wound up making this clothing. But what happened to me was that I actually didn't know what to make. I couldn't come up with anything because I was thinking, I like all the colors. If I did all the colors that I wanted to make on every item that I want to make, I'd look like a clown. I can't do that, right? And so when you see traditional regalia on people, it matches, it looks great, and I just could not do it. So going back to my student who had done the jingle dress, she actually wound up going into ceremony because because dancing is ceremonial, and she got her colors through ceremony. So I went, that's what I'm going to do. So I went into ceremony and I was like, I don't know who I am. Help me out. And of course, I set off a chain of events, by the way, that we can talk about later. So do this only if you're ready for that. So what happened was then I started to think about, so I was in the ceremony, and then that's when I made the offering, that's when actually the idea started to come. And so I wound up making this piece that it's an installation, but I'm showing this picture. You can't really see it, but it's of Catherine and I, and we're smiling at each other. And it's just a great picture of us because you can tell we're just like laughing, and it's, yeah. So I wound up making this. And so what I wanted to do was I was thinking about the sweat lodge, and I was thinking about how we use tarps, and we put those on the sweat lodge, right? And what I wanted to do was to make my outfit out of a tarp, but they don't actually sell green tarp anymore for sweat lodges. That is like 100% cotton and then just waxed kind of normal. They sell it in brown, but they don't in green. So I went and I found green material, and I wound up making this piece. And what I wanted to do is I wanted it to act like those tarps, and then it wound up just getting pulled off and becoming the outfit. I wound up, so this part, whoops, sorry. I don't know if that's gonna go far. Okay, so this part here is a shirt. And then right in here, these two pieces are a skirt. And then this here is like a robe. And so I was thinking about how we think about the sweat lodge as being the womb of Mother Earth, and so a part of Mother Earth. And so I wanted it to be green to cover that. And then yeah, I had a dream, and I was shown this shirt that I could possibly make. And that's the shirt there, but I couldn't make it myself. So I had to hire somebody to actually do the design with them. And you can see that it's quite big. You're not going to see the shirt on its own. Well, kind of, maybe, let's see. Okay, so that's just it installed. That's the beadwork that's on the robe. You kind of can't see it, but here, because it's so dark in the gallery, but here is the shirt. I can't actually put it on myself. They actually have to dress me. So I can pull it on, but after that I have to put my arms up because it's ribbons, and it winds up being puffy. And it becomes this kind of like this really puffy, large shirt, and it's just, and then all these ribbons are on it. So it lays flat as it is. And so my studio assistant, I was able to hire a studio assistant, thank goodness, Izzy here, and then Catherine are helping to get me dressed. So as part of the performance, I help Catherine get dressed, and then she helps me get dressed, and then we go on a promenade. Because if you've ever been to the Nickel Gallery, it's very, very long. So they're getting me dressed here. So you kind of can't see it, but in the bottom one here, there's a robe coming. The robe is being put on, and you can see then the robe is right here. And so I stand as close as possible. They put it on, and then I pull it off as if when you're taking the tarps off after the sweat to let them dry. So that's what I was thinking about. And then we go on a promenade. You can't see me. You can see Catherine's here. I'm there, but you can see kind of the bottom of the robe. And then we wind up at these stairs because it's such a large place. You can see how long the robe is. And so when I have a hat, had the shirt, had the skirt, have the robe, and then I stand like this, and then I walk. And when I put it on, it's like I all of a sudden became regal, right? And so I kept these up because to see the beadwork on the back, because the beadwork is covered. So you see it when I'm walking, and it has to be out like that, like wings. And then I walk. And so then we walked up so there we are posing. I'm being the queen. Do I look like a queen? I just had my nose stuck up the whole time. And then we walk, you kind of can't see, but we're at the top. We walk up to the top here, and there's actually stairs here. And I'm sorry that the images are so dark. And then right behind us is an elevator. So we call the elevator, we go on the elevator, we come down, and then we take off the clothes and we reinstall them into the piece that they are. And so when I was thinking about the piece, I actually tell people I don't really actually think that's who I am. I don't know how it kind of came to be. I think I'm I do think I'm in there. And my friend said, I think what you wound up doing is you made a we and not just a you. Because when you think about going into ceremony, it's usually we, right? It's community, and we bring a lot of people in and we create and we make these things. And then I was also, so Maria Campbell happened to be there too. And she talked to me later about it. And she said, she goes, what she said is what she thought it was about was resistance. She said it was like you were you, and then you went and you put this on and you stood up and you were proud. And it was like we're resisting, we're here, we're going to be, and we're beautiful. And she said, and when you walked up, she said, it reminded me of one of the men that was hung at because of the Riel resistance. And she said, his name is something Voice. She said when he was getting hung with the other men started singing their death songs, but he didn't. He actually wound up singing a love song to his wife. And for her and for a lot of people, that was resistance. And that was power in that. And she said, when you guys got upstairs, I thought you were going to start singing. She said, and I said, so funny, because I wanted to, but I didn't know what to sing, what I should sing. So I didn't wind up singing. And so what we did was we actually wound up just saying the name of our exhibition, which is Mama Wokamatawak, which means we work together, they work together, they gather to work together. And so that was talking about Catherine's and my friendship and then working together, and then also about community. The other thing that I was thinking that it was about was in Blackfoot territory, Reg Crowshoe, he's one of the elders at the University of Calgary. He talks about walking parallel paths and about how we do different things. And so when instead of signing documents, we smoke pipe, that kind of thing. And so I was thinking about how so what I beaded onto the back was Thunderbird, and Thunderbird is really high up there, right? We think of like every day here, the eagle shows us that, but Thunderbird is even higher. But we know that, but we don't have to say it. We just know it. But when you think about kings and queens, like they say it, they've placed themselves next to Creator in a different way, right? But they're holding those places, but in really different ways. And so when I was thinking about the parallel paths and processes, that's what I was also thinking about. So, we can put, we have our ceremony that's on the ground and it's humble. And then when we think about the royal ceremonies, they're not exactly that. So I think that there's more in there that I don't quite understand yet, but it's slowly coming out. And that I have other work I can talk about, but I've been talking a long time. So that's it. Are there any questions?
For those of you online, if you want to ask a question, feel free to type it into the chat, or you can use the raise hand function and we'll call on you to turn on your camera and microphone. For those of you in the space, just raise your hand and I'll grab a microphone to you.
Yes.
I see one in the front row here.
First of all, thank you so much for that beautiful, beautiful talk and your work.
Thank you.
I'm really curious in terms of the patterning that I'm seeing in your beadwork, and that there was often a circular pattern in the work. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. Is that intentional?
So do you mean like on the Linda Duval box? So there was that one, and then
And like
the cruise hide. The
Cruz
cruise hide?
Cruz's work. Yes.
Thank you for that question. And now I'm forgetting her name. That was totally lifted from a student who I did not know at that time. That would have not been a good thing to do, but I always like to usually say her name, and I apologize for not remembering right now. I'm having a hiccup. But that one was when I went to do the first cruise hide. We were talking about how to pattern it, and I was going to do circles, and then it kind of didn't work out that well. And then we were drawing lines, and then it was like, no, we didn't like that either. And I said, well, I can do this pattern that is like this. It's more like a fan. And that was the one that Cruz wound up settling on. And then that was the one from the student that I do have it written in. I wrote it into something so that it is legally out there that I've done that. Yeah. So apologizing to the student who taught me that. Yeah. So that was in that one specifically. So I wish that I had a bigger, deeper meaning for that, but I don't. Yeah. Thanks for the question though.
Any other questions in the space or online?
Yes. Okay. All right. So we're doing a quilling workshop. So Sandra and I. So Sandra, we're kind of Sandra is going to be running the one on Thursday from 1 till 4 o'clock. I'm going to be helping on the side. It's going to be quilling into birch bark. And do you want me to say what the shape is going to be, or what you're going to make? Oh, various shapes. Oh, and we're going to acknowledge that winter is approaching. Yeah, it's quite lovely. Sandra showed me the example of what would be made, and everybody will be very happy. Yeah. So, and then I'm doing one on Friday, but it's for people who have quilled before. So if anybody wants to do something a little harder beyond the zigzag stitch. Yeah. Any other questions? Please ask a question that so I can answer like nice, like better than my last one.
I think we actually have a question coming from
Okay.
online. Jobina, go ahead and turn on that camera and mic.
Okay, did I? No, I didn't. Wait.
Oh, that's okay, we can hear you. Go ahead, ask your question.
Okay, wait. Yeah, so anyway, I know you were talking about the spirit bead, and I had heard of this, but in my mind, I only consider it a spirit bead when it's unintentional. Like when you're putting your spirit beads in, are you doing it because you don't want to be perfect, or are you really not perfect?
I'm really not perfect. And then I'm acknowledging that by putting it in. And I also have other ones where I've made lots of errors, but then I just, I probably do that as like to cover it off.
Yeah, I usually wait till it's by accident when it happens, which is, yeah, and if it looks okay, I just leave it there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're there. Those are still there.
Yeah.
They're still there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jovina.
Thank you, Jobina.
Yeah, take care. I'll see you on Friday.
I'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye. I love Jovina. She's so awesome. You make a lot of it. Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I see another question.
People can definitely pick them out themselves, but I will put the intentional one in to cover it off for sure. Yeah.
I'm scared of this mic. Hi.
Hi.
First of all, thank you for your talk. It was wonderful. I am curious more, like, I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about your understanding of honoring someone, because I approach this as a settler. So I'm wondering if it's really your individual experience of wanting to honor someone, or is this rooted in Indigenous practices, or where you're or is it closer to like a universal understanding of honoring someone? Because I'm thinking about how you were talking about it's so relational, and it's about your relationships with someone. And I'm wondering if then it can, like, could you honor someone you've actually never met, but have a one-sided relationship with, or they've impacted you in some way that they're not aware of? And would you ever consider doing that? Like, if you could talk a little bit more about that, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you for that question. When I started doing the honor work, it was like as I said, I did it through because I went into ceremony and I was told to do that. And then I wound up losing a very good friend of mine. And that's when I realized that in this world or in this life, like as also part of like not being able to have like emotions, that we actually don't show each other emotions, and we don't actually say the things that we want to say. And often it's too late. So I started to think about how I could say those things to people that were alive now. And I don't know, have you ever like told anybody that you loved them or how amazing they are, and they're just like, you know, like I had this friend named Kyle, and he was moving, and I was really sad. And him and his family, and I loved him, I loved his family. And I said, and we were leaving, and it was like the last time I was going to see them. And I said, Kyle, I love you. And he goes, yeah. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And then I turned and looked at Aaron. I said, Aaron, I love you. And Aaron goes, I love you too. And then I told the kids I love them too. And they said it back. And then like the friend that I lost, like, it was really great because before she died, she said, I love you. And I told her, I love you back. And I thought that, and when I got off the phone from her, I didn't know she was dying. She was hiding it from everyone. And I skipped around, and then she died. And I was like, thank God, the last thing that I said to her was, I love you. Right. And so when I think about honoring, I think about that. And so I'm thinking about those people that I want them to know today, now, that I love them and that they were important to me. And, I did get it, the first thing, through Cruz, because I was thinking about, like how he wasn't being honored at school, and likely not being honored in the house in the way he needed. I loved him. I was doing things for him, but there was obviously something missing for him. And I think we go through life not knowing that, right? And I think that it is cultural. I can't give you any honor teachings because I don't actually, nobody's ever taught, like I actually was making a call to my teacher once about that, and then it never happened. But we have honor songs in our culture, and so we're honoring people and beings, and like we honor, like we believe beings exist not just in humans but in other ways, in the plants. And so when we're out there picking, we honor them by giving an offering, right? So it's very central to our world and to what we believe in. But this world, this colonized world, has kind of got us forgetting that, right? And I do think that we can be definitely influenced by people we don't know, like songs and whatever. And so I think that you can definitely make honor work for them if that feels right, But for me, it will be with those relationships with the people that are here now, and I'm wanting to show them like how important they are. Because I think that if I knew you and I made it work for you, how would that make you feel? Yeah, and that's kind of how I was thinking, was because my energy is going into it, and the love and the time and because when you're beading, if everybody who beads, like that is time, that is like conversations. And it's almost like sometimes they hear it even, from a distance, because all of a sudden you'll get a call or something, and it's like, oh, they knew I was like making work for them that I'm hiding because it's a surprise or whatever. Yeah. So did that answer? Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
We had a lovely comment from Heather online who just wants to say hi. Very lovely work with Saki. Saki? Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right.
Thank you, Heather. Hi, Dana.
I wanted to kind of speak a little bit to the piece that you did, the hockey mask.
Yes.
Specifically because of like choosing colors and even pieces in transition, like when you're thinking about how we honor the people, and in that way, you're kind of like, you're doing this exercise with like a child that's in transition, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And specifically, and I think also too, for me, what was really interesting about that piece too is like how we see hockey, especially here in so-called Canada, and the sort of masculinity that's around it, this perception and all of that, and just kind of like the playfulness that comes with the mask, with the rainbow, giving that nudge, but also just like the embellishment and I just also to kind of, I think, and I don't know if you're thinking about this, but just like how it really pushes back against these gender binaries that have been really put on us, even just thinking about beadwork and honoring people, especially like men or boys or folks of a certain gender, or for thinking about like in terms of like that, or what we're expected from society versus what actually is. And if you, and also just like the choice of doing it with the moose hide, and
Yeah.
all of these choices. Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk more about that.
About the choice of the moose hide and
Just
and
yeah, all of
hide,
it, because it really does push against convention, which a lot of your work does. How you you transformed a book into like with beads,
Mhm.
with the Maria Campbell, with the half breed. So just like thinking about even this hockey mask, and I wonder too if it fits. Does it fit August? Like in August
Anymore?
wear it?
I don't like that was I should ask. Yeah, I wonder if it would actually. Yeah, it would have been a like more like a teen kind of age mask. Yeah, when I was making this, I was thinking about I was probably thinking about indigenization a little bit too, right? Because I think that we get hidden in like depending on where you grow up and who you're around and stuff. And he would have been probably one of the only Indigenous kids in that hockey team, right? And so kind of acknowledging him and his spirit, right? And so red flowers were really important to him when he was young, right? In a spiritual way. And so that's why that's across the top. And then the image there is on the side is actually him in goal. So it's like two different ones on each side, right? Because he's a goalie, yeah.
And so he's a goalie.
Yeah. And so why there's a cage, and I wanted to cover it all up to make it, bring out his indigeneity, and then also like making sure that he was a part of it. So I didn't actually say this, but on the jaw there, that was a design he made. So he would doodle that kind of thing in school. I could like, oh no, okay. He would doodle that in school. And then when it finally came down to him, because I had to, it was like, okay, it's almost time. I need this, it's almost time. And then getting the colors. So then he wound up choosing those colors. And so now we've taken off the old name and we're putting the new name on. And now it's black and white. So it used to be blues, but now it's black and white. And oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so that was something that he drew, like that bottom part in school, and like it looks kind of to me a little bit alienish, but also kind of like the sun as well. And so yeah, and so the color choices were kind of done one at a time, but I still think it works together very well. And then conversation, because I think he was about 12 when we were making it. Yeah. So yeah, and so what happened was he had put on his wall in tape. What's that brown tape called again? Masking tape. Yeah. Masking tape on the wall, and it said hockey really deep in one piece, then an equal sign, and then another piece that said life. And I was like, can we call it that? And he's like, no, that's just for me right now. And then now that there's a change and we're updating it and everything, I said, can I call it that now? And he said, yes, you may. So yeah, so there was an indigenizing, and that's an otter pelt that's in there, but that'll be changing out too, because as so in our society, like as people grow, some people will stay the same, but other people will have shifts and changes, and names will change, and like spirit names and things. So yeah.
It should be interesting to see how you're going to document that, or how do you show transition as well, because it is about a life. And if you're really thinking about it through the stages, that'll be really interesting to see how it changes, because that's almost like a conservator's nightmare to like watch change the name. I do that all the time though. And like, why not? It's the indigenizing, because it's honoring the stages of life.
Yeah. Nobody, that one's not owned by anybody. So this will be A-okay. It would just like, I'd like to take off all the old images off the internet so that we could like rest it. Yeah. But I was also thinking like of,
that's a whole other conversation. That's so interesting.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I almost like I did throw at him, should we call it the piece formerly known as? And then, yeah, and then we didn't, but it was that for a day. Yeah. So I'm actually pretty excited about it changing. Yeah.
A basic question just about the materials. So you seem to have a whole ton of moose hides.
Oh yes.
Hanging out.
Yes.
Like how does this happen? Is it? Do you hunt them? A partner hunt them?
No. I buy them.
Do any of the tanning?
I buy them. So my so Larry, my partner, he is from northern Saskatchewan, and they do a lot of moose hide tanning there. And so there is a place called, so if you're there at the right time, you can buy them direct from people. But if not, then they'll also sell them to a place that used to be open. They just closed in the last year, called Robertson's. And every time I would go there, I would say, what do you have? What do you have? And so this is how Catherine got hers too. Like, I'm going to L'Orange, and Catherine be like, picking up a hide. So yeah. So I've seen the price increase. So I was buying them, probably the cheaper ones were like about 600 at that time. And then really good ones were 800. And now they're just slowly going up and up and up. So I think closer to $2,000 now. Yeah. But they're closed now. And so it would have to show up there at the right time to get it like direct from somebody who's just done it, made it. So I've been fortunate.
No, I mean, it's beautiful, and the smell is fantastic. I love that idea of you going through the hallways with, I don't know.
Now you know what to do.
I love it.
Put on your jingles and
just a little bag of scraps smells so strong. I can just imagine having
opening up a hide. Yeah.
Wow.
Walking through. Yeah.
Wow.
It is great. Yeah.
So I don't know, do we have more questions? I kind of feel I've got the mic in my hand, and it might be just a good time to say, Nêhiyaw.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. A big thank you. So the workshops are at Daphne, which is Casgrain, and you can either send an email, or it's 5425 Casgrain, and Thursday afternoon and Friday morning.
Yes.
And thank you so much for being here, Judy.
Thank you.
Thank you as well, Sandra. Looking forward to seeing you both more this week. But okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you to Judy, and thank you to Hannah, and thank you for all of you for coming into ForSpace today and activating this conversation. For those of you online and those of you here in the space, thank you for your questions and contributions. We're going to be closing up the Zoom and the live stream now, but just a quick reminder that this conversation is already available on our YouTube channel if you'd like to revisit or share it. So thanks again, and join us at ForSpace soon. Have a great day, everybody.